going to enjoy some more Zydeco music with the Ernest James Zydeco Band. Take it.
Yes, well, thank you. There's a song about not having much, but just enough.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, gosh. I was noticing some of these. There could be a Zydeco workout theme. You know how there's there's Latin and all these others, and it'd be this washboard instrument of yours would be part of it, and then you're rolling around on the floor. I think there's a business opportunity there for you.
It's called Zydafit.
Oh, it exists?
There's a woman in Louisiana who just started promoting it this year.
See, I'm occasionally one step behind. Dang it. Well, but there's a fitness opportunity with this, so this will be fun. I am really thrilled to welcome back our own Kara Q. If you don't know about her, she has studied world religions for 19 years and has a bachelor's degree in religious studies from the University of Arizona and a master's in philosophy and ecumenics with distinction from Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland. So please welcome back Kara Q. I love you. Everybody take a breath. Let's do that again. Take a breath. So I take breaths all the time. I have to. I feel like I'm really loud. Can I just, is that, okay. Well, there's Stevie.
I had a problem as soon as you stood up.
That's okay. Some people ask if that's me. I'm like, I wish, right? So my laptop's a dinosaur. This better not cut into my time. Anyway, I want to say first of all, happy anniversary Oasis. We are 4 years old. Through hard work, dedication, staying attuned with our vision, love, and logic, created this. Humans did this because humans do things. And that's pretty awesome. There we are. It already is in us. One of the great things about Oasis is that we can all believe different things at different times, and we are all here for each other no matter what, or no matter where we are on the belief spectrum. Oasis is not based on beliefs, it's based on humans. So that annoying question, well, why do you bother to gather if you don't have religion or believe in the same thing? Because we are the same thing. Our gathering is an investment in our reality as humans. We wish to invest and investigate what all those definitions are, because it helps us define who we are. Duh. Everything I'm about to say today is an honest critique of religion. This is no different than what you would find in any academic circle in America today for religious studies majors. Guy can back me up on that. I was kind of shocked my first little roundtable discussion of religion in one of my classes because I had never heard these things before. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of that journey. We're all on a different journey. We're all on a similar journey. We're all on one journey. That's the gradations of how we look at things. And I want to hear your stories. I want to hear about your transitions and your exits. They're my favorite stories out there. This quote, where's the next one here? Can we get to the next one? Okay, well, the quote is by Chardin. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And I used to really hold on to this. I used to think it was like this last little bit of enlightenment that I could have, because it didn't have to do with religion, right? I could just still be my spiritual humanist self and have this quote. Until I started to really look at it a little bit deeper, and I realized it's doing what religion does too, and it denies the human as being the primary. It takes it away, it makes it less. And so I had to let go of this too. So I no longer believe this. Letting go of beliefs is a journey. Eventually it's enlightening, I can assure you, wherever you are. It's happening, it's good. But while you're going through it, it can be quite threatening. And it's not something we talk awful lot about here, the anxiety of it. As I was a religious studies major in my 20s who was raised Christian, certain things were very difficult to absorb as class got further into the semester. But as a liberal Christian, I had it a lot easier than some of the more evangelical ones. And you could tell the difference between the liberal Christians and the evangelical Christians because the liberal Christians could sit in their seat just the same throughout the entire semester and take notes. As we got further in, and things like the Bible's not a historical document came up,
the evangelicals would sink a little lower. And after midterms, when that little thing was floated that there's no actual historical evidence for a human being known as Jesus came about, their heads were just above their desks. And you could see the difference. And my heart ached for them. Where's the support for these people in these communities? You could hear the audible crush of beliefs in those classrooms being thrown up against a wall of facts. But even for me, some of these things were hard. And I had to move to acknowledge that I was still here. Jesus was not the Son of God. Okay. I'm still here. All right. Maybe there wasn't a Last Supper. I'm still here. Maybe the crucifixion didn't happen. The sun is still up. Well, maybe not today, but it's up. It's snowing. There's evidence of something happening, right? I kept walking. The earth kept holding me up. I was still alive. I could still breathe. What if that voice in my head wasn't God? Did that make me crazy? Can you go secular and still hold on to the wonderment around you? Will that magic between two people as they look into each other still be felt? Will I feel again? Will I have emotions? Or, hang on, will I be able to be a bitch without consequences? Please tell me I can tell people off and no one's looking to keep record. Please tell me I can just let it all go and be a bitch. That would be awesome. It turns out, if you're not a bitch, not believing in God is not automatically going to make you one either, even if no one's looking. I have myself to be accountable for. As I began to break away from religion, I had some typical symptoms. I had anxiety, I had a lot more questions, and I felt an imbalance. I became nihilistic, and when you're nihilistic, sometimes it can feel like just a strangle against your neck. You mean nothing means anything? If meaning was created for me, and that meaning really only mattered when I died and received eternal life, then how can I find meaning in the here and now? It was absolutely terrifying. And then there was the deeper manipulation religion gives you. If I leave, am I still a good person? As I moved further into adulthood, I kept running into things not covered in the eternal and immortal wisdom of the Bible, like owning a dog, how to cook, how to have a relationship, trauma, abuse, childbirth, how to heal, how to balance your bank account, how to deal with landlords, siblings, addiction, incompetence, or how to be a human. Oh yes, I could read things between the lines. I could dissect and contextualize things to fit into the modern world of problems. Yes, I'm sure I could find a slew of solutions in the Beatitudes and the parable of the bridegroom. But when you have to do that much gymnastics to make it fit your query and end up at the cul-de-sac known as Scripture is not enough. This was hard to take, but ultimately I found it to be true. It also didn't mean I could not find meaning in Scripture from time to time. It's full of incredible stories, really good ones. Most Scriptures are. But that doesn't have to make it a handbook for life. I could hold on to its beauty, but I did not have to swallow its poison. I could choose. I didn't have to get mired in its contradictory notions of what one should believe in order to be accepted by God. Everything is told to you in the circumstance of approval or disapproval of God. This is how you should be to win favor, to get into heaven, or to be good. But who is God? And what about his standards makes him the authority on how I should believe? Does he even like Chanel? Why must I seek approval from someone who is inevitably going to be angry? Abusive relationship, anyone? George Carlin describes him this way, and I'm sure some of you have heard this, but it really is one of my favorites because it's so right. Religion has convinced people that there is an invisible man in the sky, living, who watches everything you do every minute of every day. And the invisible man has a list of 10 specific things he does not want you to do. And if you do any of these things, he will send you to a very special place of burning and fire and smoke and torture and anguish for you to live forever and ever and suffer and burn and scream until the end of time. But he loves you. In a way, thanks to Carlin, I had concluded that the Old Testament God is modeled on the alcoholic father. Never knowing how he's going to come home, not sure if he'll be there for you when you need him the most. If you mess up, there will be a roaring anger and gnashing of teeth. And in a way, the New Testament God is the child of that alcoholic father, choosing forgiveness 77 times, trying as hard as he can to be a good and loving father, even though he didn't have the perfect role model. His great attempt to break free from family patterns, new avenues are laid down, but all within the DNA of do this or else. Jesus comes along and he tries his best to create a new path. He strips down the commandments to just 2. He talked about relationship and brotherly love. And to be honest, I don't have an issue with Jesus. But how he was edited and how he was mythologized kind of really bugs me. I feel like the PR team had to travel the corners of the Mediterranean world to find out just how big of a spin they had to put on him so he could eventually be universally accepted. Because it's not enough to be Jesus. You gotta be the Christ too. Just like being human isn't enough. You have to have God working through you too. Christianity, in its first 300 years, bulldozed over the area at a conversion rate of 40% per decade. That is huge and fast. Only Islam can go faster. How was it done? It was done by focusing on the miraculous rather than focusing on the teachings. It wasn't enough to teach about turning the other cheek. He had to walk on water too. It wasn't enough to care for the poor. He had to change water into wine. It's not enough to teach forgiveness. You've got to be able to raise people from the dead. Top that, local B-list prophet. It's like his publicist covered all the bases so that nothing was left out of what he could do. Jesus had it all. He was like the Walmart of prophets. For the first 150 years, the church, they argued relentlessly about what percentage of Jesus was human and what portion was God. To be fully human was not good enough. And ultimately, that's one of the big messages. To be human is to be a fleshy, tempted, lowly creature. If you're human and you don't worship a godlike figure, then you must be lost. You can't do the work. Your thoughts, your rationale are never good enough because you don't have the supernatural ability to make the correct decisions. This message is manipulative, disempowering, and most certainly dangerous. Who are you to think you can do it? And because human beings invented religion, the bigger question then becomes, do we even want to solve our own problems? Or are we frightened of the problems we have created? In Sapiens, this is brought up a lot. Okay, Mike Oss gave me this book, and I'm sure he's told all of you about it. I think he mentioned it in a few of his talks. This is a really good book. Everybody should read it. If you're a sapien, you should read Sapiens. Harari in this book points out that humans have an inability to turn things around when they know that they're wrong. Within 1,000 years of the agricultural revolution, 11,000 years ago, we knew it was wrong. It had already screwed everything up, but we were helpless to turn it around. Isn't it kind of funny then that this dysfunction was simultaneous with the invention of myth? We can no longer afford to do this. Was God a buffer invented to prevent us from the realization that we have created our own destruction? Like the earth is dying, thanks to us. Nuclear annihilation, thanks to us. There are 16,000 nuclear warheads on this earth. It only takes 4 to destroy life on earth. We did that. God didn't. And God's not going to come down and solve the problem. We have to. After my initial pangs of guilt, feeling foreign, anxiety, and nihilism left. I was left with my immediate surroundings, my body, my lungs, my beating heart, my family, my friends, my trees out in my yard, the animals all around us, all the lessons of my life, all the people I had ever met in my entire life all over the world. Food, amazing food, all the books and paintings and music and art I could consume. And yes, all the unknowns were still there too. I thought I had left the depths of what it meant to be a thinker. But what really happened was that I had activated something deep inside of me that could not have been accessed had I remained a Christian. Everything got deeper, and everything became more real. Pixels got more saturated, colors became more vibrant. The filter had been lifted, and everything was in HD. People are afraid if they leave religion that they're giving up a place of connection. They are giving up approval and goodness and wisdom, that mystery and magic won't be in their lives. But when you start to connect with what's really around you, when you take in that human being looking back at you, you find a tome of experience looking back, reams of poetry to pour out of their stories, and lessons bigger than biblical proportions. I listened a lot better. I gave honor to each human, even the ones I wanted to throttle. Each one of us holds our mystery and magic. Every cell in our body is changing, listening, and moving at every second. There doesn't have to be something outside of us to make it any more interesting. Once you invest, the never-ending adventure begins. I had to stand at that great cliff called distraction, realizing that the myths I invested in were diverting me away from the very thing in front of me, the very thing I was, human. That leap made me realize the greatest story ever told was my own, and all the stories I have heard from every other human being. Human was so complex, so rich, so diverse, that it would take an eternity to unpack it. And furthermore, the earth I live on became my priority. It was heaven and hell combined because we had made it so. This was obvious. I didn't need a story to see it. It was self-explanatory. So last week, Michelle Morgan came up and she talked about our 5 core values. People are more important than beliefs. Human hands solve human problems. Be accepted and be accepting. Meaning comes from making a difference. But this last one, I want to point this out because when this slide came up, reality is known through reason. It just came up. You remember what she said? She said, that's pretty self-evident. And she moved on. No story to make up, no myth to create about it. There's nothing to explain. Reality is reality, and we experience it through reason. It is self-evident. After Parkland, we are witnessing a rise in a conversation about what it means to be alive. Teenagers are standing, marching, and speaking to claim what should be quite obvious. They have lives, and they matter. They matter because they are alive. That's it. And I also want to point out that Black Lives Matter began this conversation. These people are saying what is self-evident. It's enough to be alive. It's enough to be here. For that we should fight for our safety. For that alone we should think about our culture and how we've come to this. Just for breathing, we should stop and think about how valuable it is. And if we value our lives, then how would that change how we live? How would we alter how we see things being valued? How would we react when we see how we are valued but a little, and some valued not at all? When all evaporates from the collective imagination inherited from ancient people with their social mores and context, we will be left with the very real multitudes of real stories within the pumping blood of those around you. And once that pulse is felt, once you hear the same repeated drumming sound around you and in you, a light will be switched on. And for many of you, it already has been switched on because I see it. Something must be done about how we value the human race. Because this is the question we are headed to if we invest in humanity. This is the natural order of things. If we let go of myths, if we let go of rules and regulations hoisted upon us from an imaginary spirit in the sky that we created, then we inevitably begin to want to tackle our own problems. We will want to change, not based on an obligation from a system, but on an inherent instinct to improve oneself. And if you lack that instinct, I'm sure there's plenty of people here who can help you to get to a therapist. When we see what is wrong, we will not feel helpless. We will feel empowered. Peter Gabriel, in his song Biko, said, You can blow out a candle, but you can't blow out a fire. Once the flames begin, the wind will blow it higher. And what is wind but wisdom? The more we wake up to our here and now, the more we find our stories, our power, then we will make peace with our limitations even, and realize that our constraints can't even keep us from changing the world. Then we will come to a place of meaning. We will want to make a difference, and we won't have to walk on water to do that. Martin Luther King, a real person who did real things. Mohandas K. Gandhi, a real person who did real things. Vandana Shiva, a real person who is still doing real things. The IRA surrendered its weapons. Nelson Mandela was released from jail. We went to the freaking moon! These things happen, they're real, and isn't it enough? I am proud to be human. And even though we have an astronomical amount to do to save the entire world, we cannot export our abilities to a hope that something is going to descend and save us all, because it's not going to happen. It's up to us. Our power is enough. There are many real-life prophets alive today, and some in this room doing the work we need to do. We do not need a place of bliss that can only be experienced if we die, and only if we're good, and only if we make certain vows, and we don't need to make up a hell to make ourselves feel better because we're not bad. What happens if we stop with all the worlds and words, all the imagination and fluff and magic? What if we just listened to what is self-evident? In Buddhism, there is a story known as the Flower Sermon. And in this story, Buddha sits in front of his disciples and holds up a lotus flower. And of course, they all sit around waiting for the lesson. And Buddha just sits there. And time goes by, and time goes by. And finally, one of Buddha's most beloved disciples looks at Buddha, looks at the flower, and smiles. Buddha nods, and thus concludes the lesson. You know this one. What is a flower except to be enjoyed? What is the lotus except perfection from the mud? What are its properties except to grow in the water and never get wet? What is its meaning except to be accepted? Isn't it enough? Isn't it enough that there's beauty right in front of you? Isn't it enough that you can hold someone, make love to them, be with them? Isn't it enough to make a child laugh? Isn't it enough to hold space for a loved one as they speak their darkest truth in a very vulnerable moment? Isn't that monumentally sufficient? The final shot of Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey makes me bawl every single time, and I might just do today. I can never explain what this does to me. I have no idea why it hits me in a way. I don't think I was a cinematographer in a former life. I think it's something about human, and something about our home that gets me. The mutual stare, the seemingly similar shape of one life and all of life, the mitosis of perception, the dividing of reality, the meaning of everything through the birth of one thing. This is all in here, and here is in all of that. What is the meaning of life? It is to live it. The meaning is existing. If meaning comes from making a difference, then don't forget who the difference is. We have real work to do, Oasians, but we must begin with the work that carries all work. To be fully realized is to know your value. You are here, and that's all that matters. We can't afford to distract ourselves from our own existence. Humanity is worth fighting for, not fighting over. Our earth is how we exist. It is not our shopping mall to exploit. Our humanity and our home are tied up and bound together. Our existence is a mutual thing, a symbiosis of living. This has to be enough because this is all we've got. And that is overwhelmingly everything. Beyond belief lies an entire universe, and its whole circumference exists in you. Thank you, human beings, and happy anniversary.
Please raise your hand if you have a question that you'd like to ask Kara. Just make sure you ask a question and keep it short.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I hear a lot from fundamentalists that if I did go secular and if I abandoned belief in God, that I would somehow become a mass murderer and then have no morality whatsoever. So I'm wondering, it seems like whenever we adopt supernatural beliefs, we make that the reservoir of our morality. And I'm just kind of wondering, do you have any thoughts on why that is on a deeper level?
Jim Jones was a mass murderer. Richard Nixon was a Quaker. I'm pretty sure Truman attended church every day. And so did Johnson. Hitler was a Christian and a vegetarian. I think that's all. I mean, I understand we could get into a bigger discussion, but I just want to leave it at that, kind of. You know, morality exists outside of belief systems. It's something we tap into instinctually, I think.
Anyone else?
Well done. In 1987, I visited with a high school girlfriend. We were evangelical Christians all throughout. And I was just beginning to go public with an environmental message. And I was talking to them about the environment and how we needed to take care of it. And I was bridesmaid at her wedding and so forth. And she said, and her husband looked at me and said, "We don't have to worry about that. Christ is coming." So 30 years later, we are still at a standoff between the environment and Christ is coming. What do you say to those people?
It reminds me of one of Reagan's advisors who said, and you all might know his name, I don't remember his name, but he said, who?
James Watt?
When he said, why take care of the environment when the apocalypse is coming?
Exactly.
Yeah. To me, that's mass murder. You know, I mean, we do have a task to convince people that it's up to us, that we do make a difference, that the earth is bigger than us. And I've said this before, the earth can live without us. We cannot live without the earth. I don't understand. I think it has to do with Genesis, because in Genesis, that word dominion, people really just grabbed onto that. And they, you know, had they just said symbiosis, that would have been great. Mike Oss and I have discussed the word good, because after everything was created, it was good. And why don't people focus on the goodness of the earth? Also the retaliation for paganism, which was earth-centered at all times. People believed that if you found God in a tree, then that made you a heathen and a pagan, and pagan became a bad word. And so I think that there's this deep anti-paganism in a lot of evangelical Christians, that to admit that they are dependent on the earth means then they have to submit to something secular or something pagan. I think that that's a trick there too. I don't think there's just one answer to that question. It's disappointing and frightening. Frightening.
Any others? All right. Thank you, Kara. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I'd like to invite the Zydeco band back up and get set up here. And it's really quite an experience to get to be a part of a community where we can have talks like Kara's, where we can thoughtfully critique religion, because it's a reality of our entire culture, but where we also take value in not belittling the people who hold those beliefs. I'd like to invite you guys to contribute think about contributing today financially. A lot of you have already contributed so much, and we'd encourage you to consider doing that much more so we can provide the programs that a lot of religious institutions are able to provide. You can donate via credit card at our information and merchandise table over here, and also you can buy some of their CDs and or albums. Am I supposed to call them albums? Is that more modernized? Sound cooler? Did I sound okay? And know that you can go on our website, kcoasis.org, and you can sign up for a one-time donation. Also, we have text to give set up. I don't really have a screen up for that, so we have the way so you can literally just set up to text. You'll have a one-time, very brief thing to fill out, and then each time you come, you can literally just send a text and donate to your community. So, as they scramble to find that. All right, but guys, help us end this, and I'll have some few closing announcements for you.